Hi, everyone. Welcome to 4-H Interviews with Pros. Tonight, we're excited to have Clay Hancock from Juab County 4-H here to interview Dr. Candace Hansen-Koharchik, a senior scientist from the Planetary Science Institute. Thank you both so much for being here tonight. And Clay, I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Kelsey, and thank you, Dr. Hansen-Koharchik, for joining us on this Zoom meeting today. Well, our first question for today is, tell us a little about what you do as a senior scientist. Can you describe a typical day at your job, typical day for others in the same career?
Yes, I work on NASA's robotic missions. I have my entire career, starting with Voyager. Right now, I'm working on 2 Mars orbiters, and I'm on the camera team for each of those. And then I'm in charge of the camera on the Juno mission, which is the spacecraft is in orbit around Jupiter. So probably the most important responsibility I have is to pick targets that we want to take pictures of, and then make sure that the cameras are configured the way we want to get the best image quality that we can. So a typical day for me, well, usually there's a telecon or 2, and then I spend time looking at the images that we've already gotten from our spacecraft, and then kind of figure out where to go from there. What are we missing? What questions do we still have? And what images do we need to answer the questions we have?
Wow, that is really cool. With all the Mars work and stuff, what does an average day look like when you're working remotely?
You know, I have been working remotely since before remote working was the thing. I started in 2010, actually, because I wanted to live in beautiful southern Utah, and I still wanted to do my job, which has always been working with the science instruments on spacecraft. So I have an office. I'm not in it right now, but I have an office. I go to my office, I do my job, and then I go home. And okay, it's just me in my office, but I'm always in contact with my colleagues over Slack or email or telecons like Zoom or WebEx. And then I make a point, because I am, working remotely most of the time, I do make a point of going to team meetings in person and conferences in person. And it's actually worked out really well.
That is really cool. What makes you excited about your job?
Oh, just not knowing what, the next bit of data from the spacecraft is going to contain. I mean, part of the fun is being surprised, right? You don't know, because you're taking pictures either at a resolution that's never been done before, or at maybe a color that you haven't seen before, or a place that's never been imaged before. So it's always got this potential for something really, exciting or cool or new or something like that. So that's what I love.
That would be way cool with like the discovery and everything. This is like kind of a question stemming off of this. What's like the craziest thing that you've caught on camera, like that you took in photos of that was like just wow, like that's really cool.
We actually caught some avalanches occurring off of the polar cap at Mars. And if you think about it, how lucky do you have to be to catch an avalanche while it's, going? And so that was a real standout, just because the timing was just so perfect. But I mean, there's been, lots and lots of discoveries, seeing the volcanoes on Io and the geysers on Neptune's moon Triton, and I could just go on and on and on.
That is awesome. I mean, catching an avalanche just in normal time is already rare. So that is
Yeah.
way cool. I bet that was a highlight, definitely. You hear so much stuff about all these theories about Mars and like and life and stuff. And I was wondering what your opinion is, because you were talking about those like avalanches. If it's frozen, doesn't that take water? And like if there was water at some point on there, like I don't know, do you think there's a possibility that I mean, maybe not now,
There,
but that
there
there
is,
was
okay,
at
so
some
there
point
is,
life.
let me answer your question in two parts. Part one, there is a lot of water on Mars. Most of it is frozen. And in fact, all of it really is frozen, or it's in the air as water vapor. So there might have been life like a long time ago, because we do have geologic evidence of rivers flowing and things like that, but it was a really long time ago. The place to look for life, if you want to find life that's alive, is to go to the moons of Jupiter or Saturn or Neptune, because basically they're little, the moons of those outer solar system planets, they have a rocky core, and then they have a liquid water mantle, and then they have an ice crust, because it's cold, so it's frozen solid. And but we think there could be life in those oceans. We think, at least on Enceladus, which is one of Saturn's moons, that ocean is habitable. We don't know if it's inhabited, but it's got the right pH level, the right level of saltiness. It's got the right mineral content, so yeah. So yeah, that's like the $1 million question.
Yeah, that's super interesting. You probably get asked that question all the time. Did you choose your career because you could work remotely? And if not, why? Or if so, why? Both.
No, actually, when I started my career, it was completely unheard of to work remotely, because we really didn't have the internet infrastructure that we do today. And so it wasn't really a choice at all when I first started. Now, I will say I worked on the Cassini mission, the Cassini orbiter that was in orbit around Saturn. And for that mission, we were very deliberate about setting up the infrastructure so that people could participate from their home institutions. We knew it would be a long mission, and we knew that we couldn't expect everyone to, move to Pasadena, California for 5 years. And so we really deliberately set up so that every meeting was a telecon, and every report was documented and put on the web, and things like that were quite deliberate. And it was because of that I was able then eventually to work remotely, but it was not a choice in the beginning.
Wow, that's cool. It really shows how long you've been doing this. So you probably have a lot of experience with all of this stuff, which is an awesome thing. Thinking back, do you notice any interests you had as a youth that maybe align with what you do today with your career?
Yes, I loved science fiction. And when I was about 13, I discovered the science fiction shelf at the library and proceeded to read every book the library had. And, I loved reading about, women piloting spaceships and exploring other worlds. And it's funny because I never pictured myself in a career exploring other worlds, but that interest was there from the day I read my first science fiction book.
Dang, that's really cool. What was your favorite science fiction book that really like motivated you in this direction?
Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, the classic.
That's awesome. I've never read that. I've never even heard of that, honestly. It sounds like a good book.
Yeah.
What type of education and training prepared you to be a senior scientist at the Planetary Science Institute?
Well, I got a bachelor's degree in physics from Cal State Fullerton, so kind of normal state school. And then I had an opportunity to work at the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California, with robotic, well, it was Voyager at the time. That's the mission I was hired to work on. And then, but what I was doing was more systems engineering and not science. And what I found was that I really wanted to be looking at the data and figuring out what it all meant, and not so much the other work that I was doing. So I went back to school while working, and I got a PhD in planetary physics from UCLA.
Wow, that is really cool. Can I ask how many years it took? Like you went
It
to
took a
college in order
long time.
to
Well,
it seems like it
because I
would.
went, when I started graduate school, I didn't even have a master's degree. So a couple of years to get my master's degree, and then after that, doing the dissertation, and of course, doing it all part-time because I was working. Altogether, it took about 7 years.
Wow, that's a lot of schooling.
Yeah.
But I'll bet it was definitely worth it with
Oh, yeah.
all the
Yeah. When I was
experiences.
done,
So
all the doors and opportunities just flew open, and it means, that I can be a co-investigator, a scientist on these mission teams. So rather than working for the scientists, I'm one of them, and I get to, look at the data and come up with my own hypotheses and write papers. And so, yeah, it's all that time and effort, and it was hard, was definitely worth it.
that is yeah, I bet it was awesome. What is the average pay for a person who works in your field? Starting versus established, national versus Utah. And you don't have to say your average. You don't have to say exactly what you get paid, just whatever your average is.
I'm actually not sure, because it depends a lot whether you're working in academia or whether you're working at one of the labs, one of the NASA labs. I would say, I'm just going to guess that you'd start in the early or in the low 6 figures if you were at one of the national labs, and somewhat less than that probably in academia.
Okay. That makes sense. What types of skills are necessary for succeeding in your career?
Oh, you have to like math. And I would say curiosity is a big factor. You have to, as it turns out, you have to be very humble, because you're wrong a lot. I've had a lot of hypotheses that turned out to be wrong, and you can't, take that personally and think, that you're stupid or something, because you're not. It's just that nature is very complicated. And so I would say that touch of humility is really important. But mostly it's just wanting to get to the bottom of something. Here's a question. I have this question. How am I going to answer my question? What data do I need? What measurements do I need? And that kind of curiosity is key.
I really like that. I can tell you're super passionate about this, which is awesome. I mean, we need people like you in it.
I'm lucky because I get to do what I love. I do what I love every day.
That's awesome. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in this field?
Well, I mean, everybody's kind of got a pretty big ego, so you have to just sort of deal with that. And it's not terrible. You just, have to, I don't know, play with the big dogs and be willing to, and, not feel like your opinion is any less than anyone else's. If you've done your research, you're probably the expert. So, but it's hard. That's much easier said than done. When a senior colleague has a different hypothesis or a different opinion or whatever, it is hard to sort of buck that. And then conventional wisdom is another one that, is very powerful. And sometimes you just have to say, well, the conventional wisdom is wrong, and here's why. Or it should be questioned, and here's why.
Yeah, I like that. And definitely probably being an independent thinker in this stuff is probably important, because then you can think of new thoughts and thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
What's the most valuable reward you've reaped from this career choice?
Oh, I would say the fact that when I start work in the morning, the next thing I know, it's time to quit. And so I've never watched the clock and wished for my day to go by, because I've always had a job, this job that's been interesting. And, I arrive at my office and there's all these different things, and I get to choose, do I want to work on Mars today? Do I want to work
Mhm.
on Jupiter today? And that's such a gift.
That's awesome. And I mean, you put in a lot of work to get to this place, and I'm sure you're very grateful with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you see remote work as an essential part of future careers like yours?
It is enabling for a lot of people, a lot of couples actually, because sometimes one person gets their dream job, and the couple has, or the family moves to one person's dream job. The other person doesn't necessarily want to, give up their career. And so remote working really enables those kinds of decisions where both people can do what they love and not have to choose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what can young people do today to prepare to work remotely in this field in the future?
In this field, I actually recommend not starting remotely, because you want to establish a network. But if that is how it turns out, then I would say just, do as much as you can to communicate with your colleagues. Like I said, email, Slack, conferences, and yeah, that's probably the main thing, not just stay home working all the time.
Hmm.
If you're going to
That way,
be on a team, you have to be part of the team, in person occasionally.
yeah, that makes sense. Interacting with your colleagues in person,
Yeah,
is very crucial, because then you
yeah,
develop more of a friendship with them instead of just someone on the screen, right?
right,
Um,
right.
I don't think I have any other questions. Well, actually, I do have one more. Um, what do you think? Like, I'm not sure how private some of the stuff you have to are able to share is, but I don't know. What do you think with, like, you always hear on the news about going to Mars and stuff? Like, do you think in our generation people will ever see that happen yet?
Yeah, I think so. And let me actually remind you that NASA is a civilian agency. So really we have no secrets. Um, uh, but going to Mars is hard. And not only getting there, but bringing people back safely. So NASA wants people to get there alive and come back alive. And what that means is that there are lots and lots and lots of factors that have to be considered to make sure that every piece is safe and reliable and has been tested and so on. So it's not going to be easy, but it definitely, I am sure it will happen in your generation.
Awesome. I'm excited when that happens. I'm sure it's going to take a lot of smart people like you to build our way
Or
there,
you.
but I'm sure it'll be very cool. Or me, yeah. So I'd like to hand the time back over to Kelsey, and she'll follow up with any questions from viewers in the comments.
Okay.
Okay, thank you both so much. This was such an enjoyable interview. I've been smiling with my camera off the whole time. It's been so fun to watch and such great information. And everyone who's watching this video later on, I just want to let you know that we have a few programs at Utah State that are related to what we learned tonight. And if you want to know more about what degrees USU has to offer, we have a link posted in the description of this video. And we also have a link to the Remote Online Initiative program to learn more about what you can do to be prepared to work remotely in the future. And lastly, we have a link to a very short 1 to 2 minute survey to tell us what you learned from this video. And if you complete it, you'll be entered for a chance to win a Cotopaxi backpack. So please make sure to fill that out, especially if you've watched this whole video. It'll just take a quick second and you get a chance to win. So thank you again both so much to Dr. Hansen-Koharchek and Clay tonight for being here. And I really appreciate this interview. Thank you both so much.
You're very
Yeah, of
welcome.
course.